All right. What's up, guys? It's Ben. Good morning. It is currently 4 a.m. 4:30 in the morning for me, where I'm at, and my wife is sleeping, and my puppy daughter is asleep. But we're going to do some Bee Gees reactions. I don't know what happened. Somehow I went into um, this documentary. This is where I came in, and then part two. I was on the second part of there was 13 that they were going to show, but they didn't put it in the proper order on YouTube. Um, Whoever uploaded the 13 segments or whatever. So I was using the AI from YouTube to send me to the next video that came up next, right? And somehow, for the third part, they went from doing this documentary to the BBC documentary of the Bee Gees, which is completely different. So part two did not transition into part three properly, and then I wound up watching all of that BBC documentary um, on my third part. This is so confusing, guys. I'm trying to keep it all together for you and make it make sense. Anyways, I watched all the way through the end of their BBC documentary, and then I did a 5-part segment instead of 13 parts because I wasn't going to keep breaking it up into 8-minute videos. I just went ahead and did a long one, and then I was going to do a 5-part segment. So I did the third one, the fourth one, and the fifth one. Finished out the BBC documentary and thought I was on the right path. And then you guys made it known that from the transition of part two to part three, it did make that change over to the BBC documentary instead of finishing out This Is Where I Came In. So what I've done is I have taken down the BBC documentary that I'm going to have to go back and edit and figure out how to make it the videos all make sense, which means I need to watch the first part of the BBC documentary because I missed the first like 40 minutes of that. So I have to do another reaction video for that, and then I can finish out the BBC documentary with what I have recorded already, right, without having to rewatch it. But then I found the BBC, I'm sorry, This Is Where I Came In documentary from the Bee Gees. And then I went back to where part two left off. So basically all I'm trying to say, let's make this make sense for you. My part one and part two of This Is Where I Came In is the proper parts, right? And then now I am at the segment where it left off in part two. This will now be the real part three. So we're going to start part three here because this is pretty much where I left off from part two. That way you guys can finish out This Is Where I Came In. The documentary, we'll finish it out. And then I will figure out what I'm going to do with the BBC documentary stuff, because right now it's all kind of out of whack and out of order, and I don't know how I'm going to edit my videos to make all that make sense. I might have to break it all apart and just redo it completely. So I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, so this is about where we left off on part two of my last reaction, and now we're going to get into it. So I'm just throwing that out there for you guys. We do have Patreon and Facebook and Instagram and all those good things. I do have all that. So if you guys want to follow me over there and be able to reach out to me, it's a little easier to get in touch that way. Or you can just comment in here and YouTube, and I do watch all of those videos. So yeah. So anyways, this documentary will be available on YouTube. How Do You Mend a Broken Heart documentary that I did is on my Patreon page. I have that documentary posted. So I don't really know how much more information I'm going to gather out of these documentaries, because I feel like they're kind of all just repeating the same stuff, just different timelines of on the documentary. But it's all kind of like a regurgitation, I guess you would say, of the same thing. They just keep pushing it over and over again on different documentaries. But it does every now and then mention things that, you get to watch little interviews and clips with the guys. So that's why I think it's cool. So, I mean, I don't know how much you guys are learning about the Bee Gees from any of this. You've probably already seen these things. A lot of this stuff is a first time watch for me. So I'm really enjoying, that documentary process. It's just, it's a little bit longer form of video. So it's not as quick as listening to a couple of songs and just reacting to that. So it's a little bit more long form. I don't know how much fun this is for you guys. It's a lot of fun for me. Feel kind of guilty about that, but obviously you guys want me to share this with you because I keep getting asked about it. And then there's definitely a lot of comments about, hey, part 3 is not proper. I don't know what happened, but this isn't the right documentary. I had already finished recording everything. So yeah, that's why we're here now and we're redoing it. So let me get in and we'll go ahead and hit play. It's been 6 minutes already, I think. Yeah, 6 minutes. Psst. Yeah, I need to stop talking. Here we go.
We were always on our way somewhere.
At this point, the brothers were supporting the family as professional entertainers, singing adult songs to adults. But their music and their ambitions were instantly transformed in 1964 when Australia, like the rest of the world, was invaded by the British.
When the Beatles came to Sydney, the magic was unbelievable. I was mesmerized by them because they were doing something that we love to do. And they were successful at it.
I loved it because it was so, this was a group and they were singing 3-part harmony. And they were singing it like we did.
The Bee Gees finally began denting the local charts in 1965 with self-penned songs like Wine and Women.
Wine and women and song will only make me sad. Love and kisses and hearts, a thing I never had.
We put out a record called Wine and Women, which was literally our first top 20 record. And we gave $200 to some childhood friends, a couple of young girls, and we told them, go into Sydney and buy as many of Wine and Women as you can buy. And the next week we were number 19 on the charts. So we thought, this is how it works, We've been buying our own records ever since, We were doing television shows, but we were just regular TV acts. We weren't people having hit records, And that was our dream. And at that point in time, our dream was being blocked.
I was totally convinced that the right thing for us to do was to leave Australia. We knew if we were going to make it big internationally, we had to leave Australia and go to London.
Righto, chaps, let's have a check. Flaps? Check. Check. Right up. Right. RPM, Maurice. Okay. Right.
Just before leaving the country, the Bee Gees recorded one last song, Spicks and Specks.
Where is the sun that shone on my head? The sun in my life, it is dead. It is dead.
Look at the sideburns.
We're going back to England. We're going to break through in England. And that was a far bigger battle than we could have imagined.
Where are the girls?
All right, real quick, I just wanted to mention the sideburns are awesome. And they look so young here. I understand it was the time, and the way that they dressed and everything is just, it all looks amazing to me. It's just amazing how different people are, and the way that we dress, the way that we carry ourselves, appearance wise. All of it has changed so much. The bowl cuts, they have a lot of people with the hair that was completely wrapped around their head like a little bowl. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see this.
We just had blind faith.
The Spicks and the Specks.
was a feeling inside us that once people had heard us and knew what we were about, they like us.
So they wanted to go home. So they couldn't really remember a lot about England, but they wanted to go back. We didn't want to go. We never wanted to go back. But we had to go. So my husband sent tapes to Brian Epstein. He sent tapes to Harry Lewis and Herbert Wilcox, people, London management, all these people, and left it at that.
Where are the girls?
In January 1967, the entire Gibb family boarded a ship that would take them back home to England. While at sea, they received unexpected news.
Well, we were on the Indian Ocean when we heard Spicks and Specks had gone to #1, which was very exciting.
Just blew us away. And we're a week out now, you know, and we're thinking, oh, great. You know, the only people who knew it were the rest of the Australians on board the ship, you know, going, hey, great, nice one, you got a #1.
So, of course, then they landed in England with a #1 record in Australia. Didn't mean a thing.
Wow.
5 weeks later, when the Bee Gees arrived in England, the music scene was still dominated by the Beatles, in whose wake had come the Rolling Stones, The Who, and many other successful groups. The Bee Gees were determined to be the next big thing. But their optimism was immediately challenged by a random encounter with another group.
There were these 4 guys standing on the dock. It was nighttime and it was thick fog. And, and these 4 guys were dressed exactly as the Beatles were dressed in Help.
They said they were a group, a failed group, and said, groups are out, it's over.
And they said, you know, go back, go back. And we'd go back where? It took us 5 weeks to get here, you know. Once again, it's like the resilience thing. It didn't matter what came our way. It was just another obstacle. Get out of the way. We're going to make it. We're going to be famous.
Before leaving Australia, the Bee Gees had mailed demo tapes to prospective record companies, agents, and managers in London. Nobody was interested, except for Robert Stigwood, who at the time was partnered with the Beatles manager Brian Epstein. Stigwood liked what he heard and summoned them to an audition.
My gut instinct told me that they would be sensational because you can't deny talent. And the talent was so obvious.
We go to the Savile Theatre in London, and downstairs there's like a lounge room and bar and stuff that they have in the theatres, and we set up down there.
Robert came in his coat, looking a bit like Oscar Wilde, you know.
I've always felt to this day he was a little the worse for wear when he came down. But I'm being kind, Robert.
They claim I fell asleep, which is rubbish.
He came in with his assistants and sat down and said, OK, you know, sing, show me what you do.
And we did our club act. From even a Peter, Paul and Mary section we do.
We didn't know how, you know, we were getting across to him. And then he was sing that we did about 4 or 5 songs. And he had 2 people next to him, and then he got up and he nodded to them and they all walked out. And that was it.
They came home and they were really heartbroken. They said it was just a waste of time. They got home about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. At 8:30, the phone rang and it was Robert. He said, bring them in tomorrow to sign the contracts. Just as quick as that, you know, and they didn't think he'd even heard them.
Stigwood had heard them and immediately signed the brothers to a 5-year contract.
The link between Bob Stigwood and the Bee Gees was very close, and the relationship was just like that of Brian Epstein and the Beatles. For Bob Stigwood, the Bee Gees were his boys, and it was like a family almost.
And the thing is, Robert loved them and he believed in them. Sometimes a bit of a complex relationship, but it certainly worked.
He opened up the world to the Bee Gees very, very quickly, and I don't think at that particular time anyone else could have done that job. And what's happening to us today is because of what he did then.
Robert Stigwood sat there and said, you're going to do it, and I'm going to make sure you do it. And he never, ever made a negative comment about whether it might or might not work. This is where we're going, and that's it.
In the
Wow.
event of something happening to me, there is something I would like you all to see.
I was preparing to make their first album, I took them into a demo studio.
And he said, "Can you, while you're here," it was one of the last nights, he says, "would you just write one more song for me that you really believe in, you know?" And in those days, we used to write a song in 15 minutes. You know, they weren't necessarily good, but we wrote really fast. And we went out and sat on the steps because we had to get away from everybody else to do it.
There was a power breakdown. So the three lads sat on the stairs in the dark.
In the area where the cage is, where the elevator goes down and there's steps on either side, we just sat on the steps and Barry was playing his guitar.
We were in pitch darkness. And so we were sitting, and the echo was fantastic, better than any of those toilets. And you had the whole echo of the elevator shaft and everything, so it sounded great.
I keep straining my ears to hear a sound.
And the vision that came to us was the idea of being in a mine with no light, and how would that feel?
Or have they given up and all gone home to bed? Thinking those who once existed must be dead. Have you seen my wife, Mr. Jones? Do you know what it's like on the outside? Don't go talking too loud, you'll cause a landslide, Mr. Jones.
To augment their sound and make themselves into a real band, the Bee Gees added two musician friends from Australia, Colin Peterson on drums and Vince Maloney on lead guitar. The new group recorded their first single, and Stigwood mounted a bold publicity campaign, declaring them the most significant new musical talent of 1967.
Whoa. Talking about us? You know, we were like, whoa, and Barry goes, oh my God, that's something to live up to.
This is how Stigwood wanted to launch the Bee Gees. And he didn't want to do it half-heartedly. He knew that he wanted to make an impact. And the only way about doing it is actually throwing down the gauntlet.
And they were compared with the Beatles right from the word go, which really was a compliment.
It was definitely the pressure we needed to inspire us. A lot of people would be overwhelmed by this kind of thing, but with us, that's what we wanted.
When New York mining disaster appeared in the spring of 1967, it really cut through almost everything else on the radio like just a beacon through a fog, because it was a strong narrative, mood-building song.
Have you seen my wife, Mr. Jones?
It made people realize that there were some really good new storytellers in popular music.
Don't go talking too loud, you'll cause a landslide, Mr. Jones.
In less than 6 months, the Bee Gees had gone from unknowns at the Southampton docks to having top 20 hits on both sides of the Atlantic.
Let me stop here for a second. I want to talk about something that came up in my comment section while we were discussing the Beatles and the Bee Gees. So again, I'm gonna say this, and I said it last time, but I don't know the Beatles music that well. I know like a couple of songs that I've heard by the Beatles, obviously. And even in hearing those songs, I think the only song that by the Beatles that I've actually ever listened to, when I say listen, I mean actually listen, is the Imagine song. I think that was by Lennon. So look, I know Paul McCartney and John Lennon were geniuses as far as songwriting. I'm drawing a blank of who the other Beatle member was. I should probably look that up because it's important. So again, I don't have any like negative things to say about the Beatles. I'm not saying that I am comparing the Beatles to the Bee Gees or the Bee Gees to the Beatles. I'm not doing that. I don't want to have that argument with all of you guys because I know that a lot of you are Bee Gees fans and Beatle fans. And then I know there's a lot of people who are diehard Beatle fans, but they don't really care for the Bee Gees, and then vice versa. The Bee Gees fans don't really care for the Beatles fans. I'm not a part of that discussion. So please don't put words into my mouth saying, oh, well, you can't compare the Beatles and the Bee Gees because of blah, blah. No, I can absolutely compare them. because they're both 3-part harmony bands that were pretty much starting and rocking it from the 50s, 60s, 70s. You know what I mean? So yes, it's no different than comparing current band like, I don't know, a Three Doors Down to Breaking Benjamin. It's the same kind of comparison. It's not that I'm saying one is better than the other. I don't. I mean, obviously, I'm a little bit more biased towards the Bee Gees because I've heard how many Bee Gees songs at this point. I mean, I've done complete breakdowns of albums on the Bee Gees, whereas the Beatles, I don't have anything to compare it to. So that's why I'm trying to tell you guys, like, I'm not advocating for one band or the other. I was just curious, and I asked a question, a very simple question of, can there be people who are diehard Beatles fans who actually like the Bee Gees, which obviously there is. And then, I don't know, it just kind of spun out of control for a little while there. I was getting some nasty messages and my direct messages, like, you know, my DMs is what they call it. I was getting some pretty nasty stuff, like, the Bee Gees didn't do this and this, and the Beatles brought it. And I'm like, look, I'm not saying the Beatles are a bad band. I don't think that. But again, when I said, I mentioned the Yellow Submarine song, and it was like, well, I mean, the Bee Gees did the White Lion or something's Lion, and whatever the name of that song is. I can't. I'm drawing blanks. It's 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, so my brain is not on that functioning level yet. I'm just trying to make a point that, yeah, I don't know the Beatles music. I know there is a huge Beatles craze, where there was a time where everyone was on a Beatles kick. And again, personally, coming from my viewpoint, I see it as the Beatles had money behind them. They had a record executive behind them. They had a label behind them. They had marketing teams of people, I'm sure, who were out just spreading the word, getting their name out there, and it blew up and turned into a huge thing. It's no different than what Elvis did. Elvis was the same thing. He was just a musician that happened to be a handsome guy, and he could act, and he went to war, or he was in the army, and then, you know, he had a couple of hits, but the truth is everybody's got their skeletons in their closets. So I am not a big fan of Elvis. I never have been, and I probably never will be. I knew, and what ruined it for me is when I was in junior high, I was forced to do a review, I guess, of a big music icon, and I was given the name Elvis Presley. And again, 7th grade for me, I didn't really know who Elvis was. I've heard some of his music, obviously. Who hasn't? But I didn't listen to Elvis's music. My mom was a huge Elvis fan, so she played some Elvis while I was, you know, little kid growing up. But I didn't like it. That was not my type of music at all. I mean, by the time I was 7, 8, 9 years old, I was listening to Metallica and Megadeth and Iron Maiden, and that's what I was into. I wasn't listening to gospel by Elvis Presley. I mean, you might have been whenever you were 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever, but I didn't. So what I'm trying to say is Elvis did some things in his life that I found out about while doing that report, and I don't know. I think after reading about that stuff, and some of the stuff that went down behind the scenes, there's different accounts to it. I mean, some of it's true, some of it may not be true. I don't know. I wasn't there, so you know, I can't actually make a judgment of Elvis's character, you know, as a man. It definitely made me not like Elvis. I'll say that. There were some things that I found out that I was like, wow, really? Like, whew, and it was like behind the scenes tell all type stuff. And I'm just like, goodness gracious, like as a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old, I don't know how old I was. I know I was probably 12, 13, 14. And to find out that those things actually happened and existed behind the scenes, yeah, it definitely turned me away from even further of listening to like an Elvis. I was just like, wow, people that big that have that much popularity and that much fame can be that disgusting behind the scenes. And I use that word very lightly. And please don't come at me in the comments about it, because you don't want to go down that path. I don't even want to open that door, because I don't want to talk about it. Into that discussion. My mom and I had this discussion many times throughout the years. Rest her soul. But she died on that hill. She's like, no, Elvis would never do that. Da, da, da. And I'm like, Mom, it's like written account of what happened. Like there's proof, there's receipts. So yes, he did do those things. And you know, when it got out there, it definitely changes people's minds. It changed my mind at that age. You know, growing up, I was like, wow, I can't believe this exists. Now, let me also state, there were bands that I listened to at the time that, you know, as a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, whatever, I didn't realize how bad it could be, how nasty it could be in the music industry. You know, the sex, drugs, rock and roll thing, that thing, like, dude, in the 80s, that was prevalent. I mean, and even in the 70s, it was they're big bands that I know of. Yeah, let's just say that some of these guys that were in bands, their character is not the greatest. I don't know. I mean, again, it's hard to pass judgment on things that, number one, you don't know anything about, because I wasn't there. So, and then secondly, I'm a big believer that who am I to judge? And again, I do it. I'm human. Of course, when I hear things, I'm just like, oh, wow, really? Like that sucks to hear that. But that's a judgment. So I can sit here and say, you know, I shouldn't pass judgment, which I shouldn't. But I do, because I'm human. And when I hear things like that, I'm like, ugh, it just ruins the taste in your mouth about the character of someone, is all I'm saying. So the Beatles, the Bee Gees, Elvis, Metallica, Motley Crue, it doesn't matter who we're talking about, Bon Jovi, the list goes on and on and on of things that happen behind the scenes for all of these big bands and artists and people that are like huge, larger than life, right? They all did things that when you find out, you're like, gosh, I really wish I wouldn't have heard that. I really wish I wouldn't have found that out. Just because there's some stuff that happened that you're just like, wow, really? And I'm not saying the Bee Gees is part of that, or that the Beatles was part of that. I don't really know. Again, I wasn't there. I'm just saying that throughout the years that I've been kind of let down to find out, you know, different things about bands and artists that when you get to deep diving and finding out more and more information, you find out even more than what you really want to know. But it happens in the music world. It happens in Hollywood. It happens in all kinds of places, guys. So let's just be honest. People are crap sometimes. People are just not good people. Some people are just, the fame and the fortune gets into their minds, and they think they're better than, and it gets ugly, you know. I think a lot of times people think that when you get rich and famous, that you have it all. I disagree wholeheartedly. I disagree. I think once you lose that, once you lose the anonymous factor of, you can't walk down the street without being recognized, or you go into a grocery store to buy food and you have a craze of people that come follow you because they see who you are. And once you get into that level of stuff, I think it gets muddy. you start to feel like I can get away with anything. I can do whatever I want. And I don't think that's always true, right? You bring booze and alcohol and drugs into stuff, it complicates things a lot. And we've seen numerous accounts of that throughout the years. Even in the Bee Gees, there was drugs and alcohol and things that were mixed in that probably should have stayed away from. I mean, it's just how it goes, guys. Life is hard. Golly, this was a long break. I'm sorry. Let's get back into it.
They were instantly plunged into the hurricane of first fame.
See?
But at that point, just as our heads were about to explode, Robert sat us down and said, now I want you to listen to me. You haven't made it.
Right?
You've got a hit record. Don't get it all out of proportion. When you've had 5 hit records, I'll say to you, you've made it.
A key element of their success was the emotional depth of their sound. The Bee Gees had always been fans of soul music. Recognizing this, Stigwood arranged a meeting with a legendary soul artist.
Wow.
He introduced me to Otis Redding, and we sat in the suite, and we chatted for a while, and Robert said, I want you to write a song for Otis Redding. And I said, well, we'll certainly try, we'd be delighted, because we were huge fans. Robert went out that night, and he said, I'm leaving you alone tonight. When I come back, I want to hear an Otis Redding song. I thought, oh, thanks, Robert, I was young enough and ambitious enough that, of course, I'll do it right away, To Love Somebody was born that night.
You don't know what it's like. Baby, you don't know what it's like. To love somebody, to love somebody, the way I love you.
So I sang the body of that song to Robert when he came in. He said, thank you, that's what I want. And when I got back to England, we finished the song together.
Redding died before he could record To Love Somebody. So the brothers cut it themselves, turning it into one of their most beloved songs.
To love somebody, to love somebody, the way I love you.
Wow.
No, 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 no. You don't know what it's like. You don't know.
Just before moving to England, Barry had married his Australian sweetheart, Maureen. But pop stardom changed everything, and they quickly drifted apart.
Yep.
I was one of those people who couldn't wait to get married. And that was me. I had to be loved, or I had to have a companion. We were in the studio morning, noon, and night. We were promoting Full Belt before we had a hit record. And so I hardly saw Maureen, and she hardly saw me. So within a year, the whole thing just fell apart,
For Maurice, those early heady days were one long holiday. He quickly fell into the swinging London scene, and before long, he was welcomed into the most exclusive circles of rock royalty.
When you think that 5 months before all this was going on, I was in Pitt Street buying a Beatle fan club book. And now here I am partying with these guys, my heroes. So the drink came more, the money became more. I'm only 18, 19 years of age. And after all the work we had done through clubs and everything, I felt grown up. I felt like I'd been through the mill.
Just gotta get a message to you.
Robin began dating Molly Hullis, the receptionist in Stigwood's office. They would be married in late 1968. But not before Robin faced the most traumatic event of his life.
Hither Green, less than 24 hours after the horror of the Caravelle crash.
On November 5th, Robin and his girlfriend Molly were returning to London by train. Suddenly, the train came off the tracks. 49 people were killed, 78 seriously injured.
There were just 2 of us in the compartment, and we ended up upside down, hearing people screaming. I got out of the window and walked along the side, and sort of bodies everywhere.
We were waiting for Robin to join us, and I stood up in the room and I said, I think something's happened to Robin.
pull people out of the wreckage. Yeah, I mean, it was amazing that when you're in a situation like that, you don't know your own strength. And I was bruised afterwards a lot from lifting people up, or twice my weight.
We found out where they were, where all the people were taken, at Hither Green Hospital, and we drove straight there.
And there amongst it all was poor little Robin and Molly sort of sitting in a corner like this, you know.
And the hospital scene was absolutely horrifying, to see those people with the kind of injuries that they had. It was literally like being in World War II.
I think that it probably took things like the train disaster to bring out the pathos in Robin. It's been there ever since.
Feel I'm going back to Massachusetts. Something's telling me I must go home.
I think once Massachusetts became a #1 record in England, our first #1 record, and that was something.
In Massachusetts, the day I left her standing on her own.
You can actually guess how you're going to feel when you get your first number, because it's something you've always wanted to have. It was kind of like a fulfillment of what we wanted to do. We left Australia. It was kind of a confirmation of our belief in ourselves. It's kind of like, yeah, we did the right thing.
It was their first international #1. I think for any artist and their management, when you crack that, it's a very special and emotional moment.
I still choke when I think about it. You know?
What I was so impressed with in terms of the Bee Gees is that the harmonies were incredible, very, very unique, very distinctive. Almost to where the name Bee Gees was the adjective for what they were doing from the minute they appeared on American radio. It's like it sounds like the Bee Gees.
I don't know anybody who can sing harmony quite so naturally as they do. You know, get them in a room here and ask them to sing, and immediately you're assailed by perfect harmony.
The Bee Gees' singular sound also features the presence of two distinct lead vocal styles: Barry's soulful, passionate delivery, and Robin's ethereal vibrato.
I started a joke, which started the whole world crying.
He's got a wonderful voice. It still makes me go cold when I listen to him.
I don't think there was any particular plan about who sang what. It's just where things fell, you know, where certain songs and styles worked at a certain frame of time. But certainly it was based on the style of the song more than who sang it.
Who sang the leads has never been an issue. Robin's voice was so infectious at that point that it just, those were the songs that he automatically should be singing. I knew, you know, and Maurice knew that that vibrato was killer, you know, and the more we could use it, the better.
I looked at the skies, running my hands over my eyes.
It was a vulnerable instrument in a very forceful way. It could communicate vulnerability, but a lot of personal intensity at the same time. Because he had no competition whatsoever in pop music, there was no other voice like his. What could have seemed like a weakness became an incredible strength in the band.
When it comes to the songs like Joke and Holiday, I mean, who do you know, I mean, that's the voice. That's the voice that reaches your heart.
Oh, if I'd only seen that the joke was on me.
An undeniable strength of the Bee Gees has always been their songwriting. Like John Lennon and Paul McCartney, the brothers, sometimes working separately, sometimes together, were quickly proving to be prolific composers.
Every time they would write something, they would play it to me, that I would analyze very carefully with them. And there were no holes barred at all, just an open debate, which I would normally win.
I think there's an affinity between the Bee Gees and the Beatles, particularly with their early material, in the linking of very good hooks, very good melodies, which stick in the mind. And that in itself is an extraordinarily difficult thing to do.
You had to listen to these songs once they came on. You had to listen to them because they were very, very magnetic. And they cast a spell in a way that was very piercing in its personal directness.
Smile, an everlasting smile. A smile can bring you near to.
Okay, so I want to play devil's advocate for a second here, guys. Just out of curiosity, this is something that I've always thought about, and I'm just curious what you guys feel as fans, as music listeners, as people who were experiencing these types of songs and bands for the first time ever. So there's a joke in the music world for musicians, should I say, that everything you play has already been played, has already been written, has already been used. You're just basically not copying, but you're borrowing, quote unquote, other people's music in order to create your own music. Because on the music scale, there's only so many notes that you can play, right? So everything has been done. There is no, oh, I'm going to write this for the first time and you're going to be blown away. It happens very rarely, for me even, where I'll hear an artist and I'm like, oh, wow, that's really original. But for the most part, everything I hear, I hear repeated patterns from other songs, and you hear little bits and pieces that sound kind of like this. And then maybe this section sounds a little bit like this from this song. And you can kind of tell where the songwriter or artist or band or whatever you're talking about is getting their inspiration from. Not to say that they're writing it note for note. You can't do that. I mean, that's just a cover, essentially, right? It's what they call a cover tune. But no, like, do you guys feel that the Bee Gees was using the Beatles' chord progressions and their style of music to create their own music with their own lyrics? You know, obviously they're going to change the song up, but do you feel like they were copying off of one another at the time? Where the Beatles hearing Bee Gees songs for the first time, saying the same thing about the Bee Gees, like, oh, wow, these guys are actually pretty good. You know, I love this group. This is a great group. Or was there a competition between the Beatles and the Bee Gees as to who was going to get there first? That's all I'm asking. I feel like I don't know. I don't know the answer to this, but I think the Beatles was before the Bee Gees kind of got there. It sounds like the Bee Gees came to the party a little bit after the Beatles, and it sounds from what I'm listening and they're talking about is that the members of the Bee Gees all looked up to the Beatles as if like, wow, these guys are really great. And now they're like Maurice said in the video, well, now I'm partying with these guys. Like 5 months ago, I was like looking up like, this is where I want to be. And now I'm there. He thought he made it. I mean, you heard him say it out of his own mouth. Do you think that they were using certain sections of different things to inspire them to write certain types of songs, or is it just all originality at the time? That's what I'm asking. Let me see, how do I put it? I mean, I've already asked it. Really, it's. Do you guys think honestly that the Bee Gees, when they wrote a song, they just blocked out everything else that they've heard by everyone else, and they just wrote their own music, or do you think that they were using other songs as inspiration to write their songs? Because I know a lot of bands that use other people's music in order to, what's the word? There's a lot of bands and artists out there, even in today's music, that when you hear a song, I'm like, oh my gosh, they copied so much off of so and so. Right. And then, I mean, down to the chord progression, sometimes you can hear, they'll change up the strumming pattern maybe a little bit, but the chord progression will still kind of be the same. And I'm like, dude, it sounds exactly like that. How do you not hear it? Do you not hear that this number one on the radio is the exact replica of such and such? It happens all the time. I just don't know how prevalent that was back in the 60s, 70s. Was it that big of a deal, or was this all just kind of like first time that you guys have heard this type of music? So it's just, wow, look how great they are. That's what I'm asking, because I just feel like everybody's kind of copied what's already been done at some level. So yeah, it's just a matter of piecing the right words with the right tonality versus melody versus the chord progression. That's just writing a hit song. I mean, you just kind of have to figure out your niche and roll with it. But again, a lot of this stuff was happening for the first time in music. There were no pop bands and stuff like, the Bee Gees or the Beatles. This was all kind of like a first. So the craze was all there. Whereas now it's kind of all been done. What do you write to make a big hit? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I try to think about it as a musician. I mean, I have the ability to play. And look, a lot of these songs, they're just when I use song structure, right? There's like 4 main chords that people play songs with. There's a G, a C, a D, and let's go with A. So those 4 chords, G, C, D, A, right? You can rotate those chords around in so many different directions, right? You can do G, C, D, A, G, D, A, C, D, A, C, G. You could flop it all around all you want, right? And then just write some lyrics and then figure out a pattern, right? And then now you have a song. So it happens a lot. That's the answer, right? What I'm saying is not so much that part of it. I'm saying, do you guys hear a Bee Gees song and go, the Beatles already wrote something like that? Or did you hear a Bee Gees song for the first time and go, oh, wow, that's completely different than anything else I've ever heard? All right, anyway, let's get back into it. I'm just curious.
Don't ever let me find you gone, 'cause that would bring your tears to me.
Barry had emerged as the sex symbol of the group. He was as irresistible to women as they were to him.
Oh,
I would
wow.
always carry rings in my pocket so that I'd be able to say to that girl, I love you, here's the ring, And it always led to bed. And and that was just I was a rogue. Yes, I was a rogue, I admit it. But once I saw Linda, there was only one ring. I met Linda at Top of the Pops. Linda was chosen to be the hostess the week that we were on and the week that Massachusetts was #1. And I saw her across the studio with a sash, I think that said Miss Edinburgh. And I remember thinking, that girl is devastating. And I'm going to be my usual self. I'm going straight over to that girl and do something about it.
Shortly after meeting Linda, Barry and Robert Stigwood traveled to California on business, but business wasn't on Barry's mind. Right after checking into the Beverly Hills Hotel, Barry told Stigwood that he was going home.
And he said, what? You can't go back to England, we've just arrived. There's things you have to do, there's a whole schedule. And I said, but you don't understand. Or maybe you do understand, Robert, that this is the girl, this is the one, I've got to go back, I've got to find her. I can vouch for the fact that love at first sight happens. And most certainly happened to me.
Yeah.
Barry wasn't the only Bee Gee falling in love. On December 12, 1968, with clamoring press and fans on hand, Robin and Molly married. A few months later, on February 17, 1969, in what was the pop wedding of the moment, Maurice tied the knot with Lulu, one of England's brightest young stars. The Bee Gees' greatest strength had always been their unbreakable family bond. While on the surface everything seemed wonderful, the truth was that success, love, and the trappings of fame were ripping the Bee Gees apart.
I hate to hear
There's a lot
that.
of money all of a sudden, and cars, and girlfriends, and, you know, things like that.
Your world was upside down. You just went wherever you were supposed to go, and people knew you, and people said hello and shook your hand, and you had no idea why, except that we'd made it, whatever that is, you know.
So our relationship with each other changed a bit, because we were not just kids living together, we've been kids living together with each other right up until the time we arrived, and even after we arrived in England. Now we were becoming men, and we were having thoughts about what men do on their own rather than as a unit.
It's very difficult being successful in the rock and roll business. It's damn sight more difficult to stay successful because the pressures are so great. You're always in demand, you're always at everyone's beck and call. You cannot escape the fame, which is a kind of prison for young people.
We needed that capacity for separate lives, where not everything was based on what the other did.
The tendency always is to say, damn it, I'm a Bee Gee, I'd much rather be Barry, or I'd much rather be Robin, or much rather be Maurice. Same with the Beatles, you know. They got sick and tired of being a Beatle. They wanted to be their own people, with their own recognition.
As soon as you sort of start to hit the edge of fame, then a sort of entourage emerges for each one, all giving advice, talking to them.
When you're that young and you're having a lot too much too soon, you tend to sort of, you like to have praise, and praise is a wonderful thing when you're a teenager. It kind of makes you feel and do things, it kind of makes you feel superhuman.
It'll ruin you.
Love interests were happening, and jealousies were happening. And, you know, I call it just lack of maturity.
To me, a lot of what happened in that breakup was due to too much happening too soon.
What happened was drugs.
Pilly, potty, and pissy. You know, each one did different drugs or whatever. You know, Robin would take a few pills if Barry smoked a joint or if I had a drink. Mine was booze, all the way.
We stopped knowing each other. We stopped feeling each other's feelings. And that's another lesson, you know. That's what drugs do. That's what drink does.
We lost contact with each other. Me, Barry, and Maurice didn't really talk as much as we used to, and therefore, we, you know, there was a kind of bickering going on.
If Robin said something about me, the same reporter would come to me and say, did you know that Robin said that? And vice versa, you know. I don't think we were mature enough to stop it. I think we enjoyed publicity. So the press would thrive on it, and we thrived on it. So there was all these awful feelings. Conflict all round. But at least it's true, you know? At least no one else can say, oh, this is what happened. I'm telling you what happened, you know? It was all three of us became isolated. And all three of us did things to each other that I think we're all sorry for. So, you know, that's the truth of the matter.
Family groups have a really hard time, as a rule. And in 1969, when the Bee Gees broke up, it was really a family circumstance that had done it.
I think we were all as bad as each other. I don't think you can blame it on one person. I think we were all very selfish at that point.
There's always been two very forceful personalities in the Bee Gees, and that's Barry Gibb and Robin.
Poor old Maurice was in the middle. He didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the story of my life, really.
Maurice found himself on both sides of the escalating battle, torn between the conflicting ambitions of Barry and Robin. And Robin, believing Stigwood was giving Barry more attention, became resentful. With the group about to release their fourth album, the atmosphere surrounding the brothers had become charged with suspicion and distrust.
What really happened is 1st of May, the record was coming out, and everybody sort of went for 1st of May as being the A-side, and Barry was singing the lead on that. And on the other side, there was Lamplight, which Robin wanted to sing in the lead. And so Robert chose 1st of May, and thinking he was biased towards Barry, Robin said, that's it, I've had it, because he thought it was done on purpose.
A lot of things had gone down at that time, and we needed time apart to think about them.
And that was one of those moments that we had to realize we've got to be apart for a while. But not that we wanted to, but it just had to be.
Robin quit the group and started work on a solo album. He and Molly became isolated from the family. Disturbed by his erratic behavior, Hugh and Barbara tried to make 19-year-old Robin a ward of the court.
It was kind of a whole strange episode of our lives, that particular. It didn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense now, but it happened. And it was kind of a weird feeling all the time it was happening.
Robin's very first solo single, Saved by the Bell, rose to #2 on the British charts. Barry and Maurice, continuing as the Bee Gees, made Don't Forget to Remember, which also went to #2. Amidst all the turmoil, the two remaining Bee Gees filmed a comedy special for television.
Yes, pure silliness. I think it was good that we did Cucumber Castle. It doesn't mean I think that Cucumber Castle was good.
My cucumber and I welcome you to Cucumber Castle.
I just think it was good that we did something really silly.
Host for my boring brother, the king.
And something that was fun.
Well, hello, letters. Hi, who are we having for dinner? You.
Anything to escape that whole era of drugs and to grow up finally, you know. Although from watching Cucumber Castle, I don't think we grew up at that very point.
In the event of something happening to me.
That was to come.
By early 1970, the Bee Gees had stopped working together and embarked on a series of solo projects.
I would never have guessed at that point, however, that the Bee Gees would come back together again. It didn't feel like that was ever going to happen again.
I knew they would get back together eventually. I mean, blood's thicker than water. They were brothers.
The time we spent apart was basically a rough time for the three of us emotionally, because although we separated as a group, I don't think we really wanted to.
We miss each other so desperately musically and as brothers, you know, we're brothers. And it couldn't go on, even if we weren't a group anymore, we couldn't go on not speaking to each other all our lives.
After months of trying to figure out the best way to breach the gulf between them, the brothers were finally ready to come together as the Bee Gees.
When the three of them made the piece, I said, let's go into the studio right away.
It was a little nervous working together again. The first things we cut was How Can You Mend a Broken Heart, which was written in the afternoon, and Lonely Days that night, and 2 #1 records, which we had no idea there would be.
Lonely days, lonely nights. Where would I be without my woman?
Lonely Days was an instrumental I was playing, the opening thing on the piano, and Barry and Robin came round and we started singing it, and before we knew it, the song was taking shape. We were like new, it was like fresh. It was the energy that each one had on expressing what they'd learned by being apart. It all came out in that week. And it was brilliant. It was a wonderful session. Wonderful.
Lonely days.
We came back as men, you see. We'd always been boys growing up together and brothers before. And I think we came back together as three guys where we respected each other's space and interests and opinions. If anything, that was the good thing that came out of it.
It took 2-3 years to heal. There was a real serious estrangement there because it's hard to grow up under any circumstances and to admit the fact that you're never going to be distant from your family, that you need your family. You know, all of us have to leave home at some point. And the Bee Gees, in a way, found they couldn't leave home. They had to find some adult way of going back and making peace with the past.
In writing about the problems they faced as brothers, they had created music that was deeply felt.
I can think of younger days when living for my life was everything a man could want to do.
Singing about separation and reconciliation, about love lost and found, in essence, telling their own story, they reconnected with their audience.
stop the rain from falling down? Can you stop the sun from shining? What makes the world go round?
I don't think people expected them to come back, either to reform or to come back with music that was so confident.
In the early 1970s, the Bee Gees enjoyed a short burst of success.
All right, let's pause here. I'm at 53:03 on the video. It looks like I have about a little over an hour left of the documentary, and we are right at an hour of recording time so far. So I don't want to get too much longer than that. It's hard for you guys to watch the video for this long. And if you do, I appreciate that. That's very awesome of you. But I understand that sometimes we can't watch the whole video and we wind up pausing and we think we're going to come back to it and then it winds up not getting played anymore. So I get it. Like, I'm not naive to how it works. You know, I get it. There's a lot of videos on YouTube that I'll start that I don't even get to finish because I just don't have time. Time is one of those things that it's fickle. It's very finite, and we only have a little bit of it, so it's wise to use it as we can, the best we can. I do want to look up something real quick. How long were the Beatles a group? Question mark. I'm just curious how long the Beatles made it as a group. The Beatles were officially active for 10 years under the name, but their core commercial recording career lasted for only 7 to 8 years. Because the band's lineup evolved, the exact timeline depends on how you measure their time together. The definitive timeline, the Beatles era, 10 years. The band officially took the name The Beatles in 1960 and publicly split in 1970. The Fab Four recording era, 7.5 years. Classic lineup of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison. That's the other name that I was thinking of. Ringo Starr was solidified when Ringo joined in August 1962. The commercial recording career lasted from their first single, Love Me Do, on October 1962 until Paul McCartney announced the breakup in April 1970. The core partnership was John Lennon and Paul McCartney playing music together for 1957 and a precursor band called The Quarrymen. George Harrison joined in 1958. All right, so again, you can't honestly compare the Beatles and the Bee Gees. I don't think. I mean, for the band of the Beatles to be actively together for 10 years, right? Obviously, their music has carried on well past that. I'm sitting here talking about them right now, right? So they were obviously a very large unit, but they were kind of like the first of the pop people to put their names out there like that. So, you know, they were kind of like a first of its kind. I think the Bee Gees kind of fed on that, and then they did their thing as well, but they just did it a little different, and it was a first of its kind. So I think the thing that impresses me the most about the Bee Gees is when you look at the longevity of it all, right? Obviously, there were other horrors that happened with the Beatles members, you know, with Lennon and obviously what went down with all of that. I mean, I know I know some of it. I don't know all of it. I'm not claiming to, but Hmm. Yeah, I think fame. I think fame and then obviously drugs plays a part, and all that money and all that power that comes to you, and you start to think that you're larger than life, and when you start believing that you're bigger and better and badder than anyone else in the world, uh it can really mess things up for people. And you see it time and time again. It's happened throughout history where people get a little bit too much power, a little bit too much fame, success, and they lose everything because they don't know how to control it or how to handle all of that. I think that's why when I talk about the Bee Gees, for me, this is a personal opinion, right? When I talk about the Bee Gees, it's so impressive that they made it as long as they did as a group. Obviously, they broke up and then they kind of came back together as men, as they were saying in the documentary. So there's a little time in there where the guys had to kind of get away from it all, branch out, figure out who they were as people, what is important to them, and then I think once they got back together, that solidified the bond, right? Being family members solidifies the bond, makes it a lot harder to walk away when you know that come Christmas Day you're all going to be sitting at the table together. It's awkward, right? So you have to kind of, and then especially if mom's still involved and the dad, and they're talking the brothers through it, like, hey, you need to talk to your brother. So there's a lot of that, but again, I can't claim to know what other people do in their lives. It's not my place, and I'm not here to do it. I'm not here to pass judgment. I'm just saying I can understand how all that fame and fortune and all the stuff that comes along with it could just eat you up and spit you out, right? But I think it's impressive that the Bee Gees, the longevity of the Bee Gees, in order to come back together and create and do what they did with their careers, is just it's phenomenal. From my own personal choice, I just it's mind blowing to me that these guys did it for so long. But okay, so look, it's 5:40 now. Yeah, it was early when I started this, so I'm gonna pause here, and I will pick it up from this part whenever I come back on. But hope you guys are doing well. I don't know. I hope you're enjoying this because I am, and I am still learning stuff. I said in the beginning of this, I didn't know how much more I was going to be able to find out, but I'm still finding stuff out. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you guys are well, and I will see you on the next one.